Campaign 2022. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the conversation. I'm David Schuster. We are just over a month away from some interesting primaries across the United States, including in Texas. And there's a remarkable congressional race shaping up in the 30th district of Texas. This incorporates essentially most of Dallas. And it was a seat that had been held for many years by Eddie Bernice Johnson, the Democrat. This is one of the bluest of bluest congressional districts in the country. And there's a remarkable progressive candidate who is entering a crowded field to try to win this primary. Her name is Jessica Mason. She's an organizer and an activist and joins us now. Jessica, first of all, congratulations on jumping in. Tell us a little bit about yourself for people who don't know anything.
Thanks, David. My name is Jessica Mason. I am a Navy veteran, and I currently work as an affordable housing organizer in low to moderate income tax credit properties across the district. I am a daughter of Dallas. I grew up on the South Side with my mother in an area that was devastated by a loss of industrial jobs, redlining, and an overall lack of economic investment. My father was a Teamster. My mom, Lisa, worked 12 plus hours a day for a millionaire financier, but was paid starvation wages and really just couldn't afford to keep the lights on at home.
So you guys were essentially housing insecure. How is that shaping your policies now? What do you see as being something that you could do as a member of Congress if elected, and assuming Democrats maintain control? What would be a good policy to try to help with housing?
Well, as far as housing is concerned, Dallas, we have a really bad affordable housing situation here. We have 19 affordable housing units for every 100 people in need. And as I mentioned before, I'm working also in these affordable housing communities, and people just aren't receiving the resources, enough resources they need to, make ends meet. I think that when we talk about affordable housing and the lack thereof, we need to start investing more in building new public housing infrastructure. And I think that that's something that was in Biden's Build Back Better bill. But unfortunately, it looks like there's really no chance at that passing at this time. But that would really be the biggest fix to the issue that we're seeing here in Dallas.
Is that something you would advocate in terms of Democrats breaking, when they talk about breaking apart the bill and trying to vote on individual pieces? Is that something that as a standalone you think could get through Congress?
I think that there are interests that are going to fight very hard against getting bills like this passed, whether it's wrapped up in one large bill, whether they're individual bills. I don't think it really makes a difference. I think that it's just apathy towards providing resources for those most in need and prioritizing providing resources for those who have been really, doing well throughout the pandemic, those who have actually gotten richer actually from and through this pandemic.
Well, and it feels like it's more of a challenge right now for Democrats just because of the political headwinds in terms of it looks like Republicans may gain seats. They may gain enough to take control of the US House. Given that difficult landscape, Joe Biden's approval numbers are underwater. Why now? Why enter a congressional race now as a progressive?
Well, a lot of people are very frustrated with the lack of progress on, passing Build Back Better, especially in my district. Again, there's a lot of apathy towards voting overall. This district is a safe blue district, but we have one of the lowest, turnout numbers in the entire state of Texas. And I think what people are wanting is someone who can go in and fight, and that will stay true to what we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, Black, brown women came out to vote Biden into office for this social agenda. And the fact that that's not being delivered is really having an effect on voters' willingness to want to turn out again. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing in that confidence again and telling them, we're not going to give up on this. We're going to do whatever it takes to get this passed.
Let's suppose that you win. And again, it's, suppose that Democrats control the House, but there's still Senators Manchin and Sinema there in the US Senate. And let's suppose you had an opportunity to meet them and say, hey, here's why you need to change and support this legislation. How would you make that pitch?
Of course, I always, talk about the people in my district. They're the most important things to me, and I want to make sure that I'm always speaking from their point of view. So I would go to Manchin and Sinema and explain to them, this is what my community is facing. And speaking again about turnout and having people who actually want to be involved in the democratic process, it's important that we deliver on these issues if we want to increase turnout in states like Texas, where we have, a governor who's obstructing pretty much our right to vote and the right to have, choose what we want to do with our own bodies. So this has, consequences that supersede just, the federal level. This has consequences on the state level. That's how I would go about doing it. Not sure if that would be enough to convince them, since so many people have tried over the past few months, but that's the case that I would make.
I'm so glad that you mentioned abortion rights and what's been going on in Texas, because there is this sort of debate in a lot of Democratic circles about whether it's helpful or hurtful, even now, to bring up abortion rights, reproductive rights in the terms of a political campaign. That a lot of more centrist districts, that some Democrats think it doesn't help them. But it sounds like in a place like Dallas, this is a big issue. Is that fair to say?
I would say so. We actually had one of the largest women's rights marches a couple of months back. It is something that means a lot to people here, and especially in an area that is, majority Black, low income. They are affected by this bill more than anyone else. So it's something that, people want to see change, whether you believe in it or not. I think that we can all agree that women should have the choice to choose about, to make decisions about their own reproductive health.
And would that be something you would be pushing? And let's assume that the Supreme Court rolls back Roe versus Wade this spring. Then the option is, I suppose, for Congress to get involved and try to pass some federal legislation. Is that something you would advocate for?
Absolutely. I think that, it's past time for us to codify Roe versus Wade. And to protect, the bodies and well-beings of people and women, in the United States.
There's an argument from some folks that you can't do everything in Congress, and that you have to set priorities. We've talked about affordable housing, we've talked about reproductive rights. What would the priorities be, and sort of what would be the top couple of priorities, and what are the things that you imagine can wait a while?
I would say we really need to focus on rebuilding our economy, and not just, measured by how well the stock market is doing, but, how people are feeling here on the ground. I know that, in the news cycle, we're talking about how well the economy is recovering, but that's just not being felt here with people in my community. So I think the first thing that we need to try to, attack is our economy, and that's passing some of those provisions in the Build Back Better bill that will make life a lot easier for people. And that's, pushing for universal pre-K, Medicare expansion, lowering the cost of insulin and more, and also expanding the child tax credit. I think that should be, first and foremost. All the policies that we pursue or that we prioritize need to be ones that are going to have a direct effect on the people at the bottom, the working class, the middle class, the people who have been hurt most by our, constant economic downturns.
I want to ask you a little bit about foreign policy, because Ukraine and Russia certainly in the news. There's every indication that Russia may be about to invade Ukraine. There's obviously a debate here in the United States about whether it is worth actually putting US troops into battle if, in fact, Russia does cross into Ukraine. What would you do? Would you be satisfied with just sanctions? Do you think that if Russia does go into Ukraine, the US troops should be there to greet them?
This coming from my perspective as a veteran, I think that we should always try diplomacy before anything. That's very important to me. I don't like the thought of, sending troops overseas and them losing their lives. And when there are other ways that we can address it. And I have to answer that question again from the standpoint of the people in my community who I am aiming to represent. They really have no interest in getting involved in military conflict in Ukraine. I hear a lot of people, saying that there are needs that need to be taken care of here that we have yet to accomplish. They have, no interest in sending more money to Ukraine when we're still waiting on much needed resources in our community.
We mentioned that the primary there is March the 1st. Tell us a little bit about the race. How many candidates are in it? And what do you see as being some of the defining issues or the things that are going to make or break your campaign?
So the race, I was the first person to announce my candidacy. I was actually challenging the incumbent who has been in the seat for 30 years. Because I'm a native of this district, and I really wanted to see a lot of change. After she has decided to retire, then we had, a group of people, throw their name in the race. So it's like a 9-way primary. The most pressing issues, I think we differ on what we think that the most pressing issues are. We have some people who are, primarily focused on voting rights. Some people who are, just really okay with, continuing things, how they've been, going and not really, challenging the system. I think where I come in on this race is I'm trying to change the system. I'm trying to change the status quo and do away with some of the systemic inequities that have, harmed my community. For me, it's healthcare, it's housing, and I think for other people, it's more of, more of the same.
We talk about the district being a very blue district, but is it a progressive blue district as far as you can see?
Yes. So when you go and you talk to people in the community, again, as I mentioned before, I started this race before anybody. I've knocked more doors than anyone, and my job allows me to be very close to the people in the community every single day. And when we talk about the issues, we don't talk about them in concepts of it being progressive or moderate. We just talk about the issues, and a lot of people are asking for more funding, more resources, more social policies that, of course, that we would consider to be progressive. In our community, we just don't break down things like progressive and moderate. We don't see it that way. It's just, what are the policies that we need to bring economic justice to Texas 30?
And what do you think will make the difference on March the 1st? Is it simply getting out the vote, getting your supporters, being organized? Is it having enough money to make your message get around? What's the key?
It's all of those things. It's all of those things. You have to, number one, I think the message has to be right. Again, we are in a situation where people are frustrated and they're kind of fed up with the way things have been going, and they don't want more of the same. But in order for them to know that they have someone that's ready to make that change, you have to be able to deliver that message and get it out. And of course, we know that takes money. You have to be able to get on the airwaves. You have to be able to send out mailers. And again, you have to have the infrastructure to knock doors and be able to meet people face to face.
Jessica Mason, good luck to you in the primary on March the 1st. Texas is congressional district number 30. The general election, of course, in November, but we'll see what happens March the 1st. Jessica Mason, thanks again. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David.
You got it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.